Okay, let's dive right into this breaking explainer because we have a massive, and I mean absolutely unexpected development today. A leaked internal memo just surfaced that could entirely redefine how we think about AI corporate accountability. And get this, it's happening right as OpenAI is eagerly gearing up for its massive IPO. What makes this so wild is that what started as a highly technical, really individual dispute is suddenly taking a sharp turn involving one of the most famous environmental activists in American history. We are literally watching a digital fight bleed into physical reality.
So, what happens when AI's digital risks meet physical consequences? That is exactly the question we're unpacking today. It puts the psychological risks of AI on a direct collision course with its very real physical environmental footprint. Two completely separate worlds of corporate liability might be forming an absolute pincer movement. But before we get into the details of this leaked memo and what it actually means for OpenAI, we have a quick community reminder.
If you enjoy content like this, please take a quick second to like, subscribe, follow, and turn on notifications. That way, you'll always know when new content drops. Doing so helps us out immensely, and it ensures you stay totally up to speed as these high-stakes corporate standoffs unfold. All right, let's get into the mandatory legal status update on the Stevens versus OpenAI matter. Right now, we're continuing to monitor the situation, and it's absolutely crucial to note this is still not a formal lawsuit. However, Martin Stevens has officially suspended his voluntary quiet period. Why? Well, because OpenAI filed its confidential S1 registration statement on June 8th, completely ignoring him. No engagement whatsoever. Stevens views their decision to push forward with an IPO without any direct interaction as a sign of extreme disrespect and institutional evasion, especially since it's been nearly a month since his final notice and over a year since his initial warnings. So he won't re-enter a quiet period unless it's tied to a formal agreement. As of right now, no settlement discussions have been publicly confirmed. Also, just to be clear, the dead man switch has not been activated. Martin Stevens remains safe. Section 1. The leaked Stevens-Brockovich Memo. Let's look at the breaking news and see how this conflict is building into something much, much larger. We've obtained details of a June 10th internal memorandum outlining a stunning new strategic direction, and this brilliantly illustrates the escalation at play. According to the memo, Martin Stevens has officially reached out to consumer advocate and environmental activist Erin Brockovich. I mean, for a tech corporation, Brockovich is a terrifying name to see pop up in an internal strategy document. Stevens isn't just relying on tech sector lawyers to argue over code anymore. He's reaching out to a heavy hitter whose entire legacy is built on battling corporate titans, rallying local communities, and actually winning. Now, let's hit pause for a second, because we absolutely must clarify the facts here so we don't misrepresent anything. The memo confirms that the outreach happened, but there is zero public confirmation that Stevens and Brockovich have even spoken, let alone formed any sort of active partnership yet, none. Stevens is maintaining a strict no comment on the substance of any discussions. So we have to be super careful here. This is an initiated contact, not a signed alliance. But the strategic, calculated intent behind making this move right now, that is what's truly fascinating. Section 2. OpenAI's S1 IPO Catalyst. To understand why this explosive outreach is happening at this exact moment, we have to look closely at OpenAI's financial timeline. The timeline of events proves Stevens is accelerating his strategy rapidly in direct response to corporate inaction. Look, he spent over a year warning them. Then, on May 12th, he ran a clean reproducibility test, proving the AI interaction flaws still existed. What does OpenAI do? On June 8th, they file their confidential S1 for their IPO without acknowledging him. Just 2 days later, June 10th, boom, we see this leaked memo outlining contact with Brockovich and interviews with top-tier law firms. To a plaintiff, a confidential S1 filing is a massive red flag. It signals the company is silently prepping for public investment and trying to lock down their valuation without fixing underlying liabilities. Stevens clearly interpreted their silence as a definitive trigger event, forcing this whole issue to a boiling point. Section 3. Erin Brockovich's Data Center War. Let's peel back the layers and look at the second half of this equation. Why Erin Brockovich? What exactly is she currently fighting for? 4,200. That is a staggering number. That's the amount of AI data centers currently spreading across America right now. These facilities are absolute behemoths. They consume mind-boggling amounts of water and power from local grids, often going up before communities even realize what the environmental cost is going to be. And Brockovich? She is actively tracking every single one of them. She recently launched a nationwide platform mapping this highly secretive, rapid expansion of AI infrastructure. And her campaign isn't just noise. It is already causing tangible macroeconomic disruption to the AI industry's foundational infrastructure. Driven by her platform's data, voters in Monterey Park, California, actually banned new data centers outright. Major cities like Denver and Reno, they've hit pause to draft restrictive new rules. She is successfully mobilizing thousands of everyday people against the unchecked resource consumption of corporate AI. We also can't forget this historic number: $333 million. That represents the unprecedented corporate accountability settlement she secured from PG&E back in 1996. The leaked Stevens memo explicitly cites this victory. It proves she has the exact playbook needed to dismantle institutional stonewalling, pierce through corporate silence, and drag massive entities right to the negotiating table. Section 4. Stevens versus algorithmic harms. Let's switch gears back to Martin Stevens for a moment to really understand the highly technical, intimate risks he is battling on his side of the board. While Brockovich is fighting for physical power grids, Stevens brings a massive evidentiary archive focusing on severe digital vulnerabilities. He alleges that prolonged interactions with conversational AI can trigger incredibly dangerous outcomes. Take synthetic empathy failures, for instance. This is when an AI mimics human emotion so convincingly that a vulnerable user literally forgets it's a machine, which leads to devastating emotional crashes when the AI suddenly breaks character or hallucination completely takes over. Or consider escalation loops, where the AI continuously amplifies a user's anxieties rather than diffusing them. Stevens has the receipts for all of this: complete account exports, interaction logs, and 2 published books documenting exactly how these behaviors bypass user defenses and create profound psychological dependency. Section 5. The dual front strategy. This brings us right to the core of the leaked June 10th memo, and why this potential convergence is so legally devastating for a company prepping to go public. Combining Stevens' digital liability front with Brockovich's physical infrastructure front creates an asymmetric leverage nightmare for any tech company. Think about it for a second. On the left flank, you've got elite law firms systematically attacking algorithmic safety models and consumer harms. On the right flank, you have a sprawling populist movement attacking the physical footprint required to even run those models in the first place. It is a perfectly executed pincer movement. There's a quote directly from the internal memo that highlights exactly how this pairing would transform the conflict. Attacking OpenAI's physical infrastructure footprint while we attack their algorithmic safety models forces the target to defend against a total war corporate liability scenario. This shifts the dynamic from a quiet technical corporate argument into a highly visible populist public interest movement right on the eve of an IPO. And underwriters, they despise uncertainty because it threatens valuation. A total war scenario on 2 separate fronts makes risk impossible to price. That gives the plaintiffs massive, massive leverage. Section 6. Confronting the transparency deficit. So why does this potential alliance make so much sense? Because there is one glaring theme connecting Stevens' fight and Brockovich's fight: what the memo calls the transparency deficit. The contrast here is just incredibly stark. Look at the evasion from OpenAI. They're relying entirely on automated responses, meeting serious safety warnings with absolute silence, filing a confidential S1 to keep financials hidden, and building secretive infrastructure behind NDAs. Now contrast that with the meticulous documentation of the advocates. They are publishing books, conducting clean reproducibility tests, building crowdsourced public data maps, and aggressively raising public awareness. The transparency deficit is vast. OpenAI is defined by its inaction right now, while Stevens and Brockovich are relying on extreme documentation and loud public engagement. So if OpenAI wants to resolve this escalating standoff before their IPO rings the bell, they have to move away from automated stonewalling and actually take action. They need to follow these exact steps. Step 1. Meaningful human engagement with the warnings presented to them. Seems simple, right? Step 2. Implement actual structural safety reforms to the AI architectures to prevent these dangerous escalation loops. And step 3 requires certified user safety education. The public needs to actually understand the risks of synthetic empathy and psychological dependency before they hand over their emotional data. Stevens has made it abundantly clear. He wants structural reform, not just a quiet payoff. If you found this explainer valuable, please take a quick second to like, subscribe, share, follow, and turn on notifications. It really helps us continue bringing you detailed content like this and ensures you never miss future releases as we track this rapidly developing series. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. The S1 window for a private resolution is closing fast. OpenAI is staring down a plaintiff armed with elite tech lawyers on one side and potentially the country's most famous environmental crusader on the other. So, with the clock ticking, will OpenAI finally break their silence and engage, or are they about to walk blindly into a dual-front public war right before their IPO? What do you think their next move is going to be? Let me know, and as always, keep learning.